This is the Blackout Podcast.
Hi, Nick.
Hello. How's it going?
Thanks for coming in today. I know you are super busy because you have Flash coming in a few days and you're supposed to light up this huge church. So I'm going to start with that. Tell me
sure
about that.
So it's it's the largest cathedral I've personally ever been inside of. It's at the Notre Dame d'Assomption. I can't actually pronounce it in the correct accent, but it's a cathedral in Moncton. Enormous, like 3 stories up. And we're using between 10 and 15 projectors basically to light up every inch of this place for the audience.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's going to be very cool. It's part of a Flash Festival.
Yeah, so what's Flash Festival about?
So Flash Festivals, it started as a light arts festival, but I think at its core, it's really a community festival with a focus on light arts and kind of using technology to make art. And sort of an initiative started by Lisa Griffin. She also does popular graffiti festival up there as well. So
She's super busy.
yes, yeah. Especially around this time of year.
Yeah. And I remember when we were talking, you told me that last year was freezing.
Oh yes. Yeah, no, freezing cold. We set up on top of. We did 2 different installations. We did Church of the Trees in a different church there, which is a 360 kind of in the jungle forest kind of installation, similar to this one this year. And we also did the Assumption Building downtown, and set up in a. It must have been minus 25 on top of on top of the National Bank building.
Oh, no.
Quite the experience.
So how did you even get into this? Lighting, what's it even called?
Projection mapping, I suppose, is what I sort of specialize in.
Okay.
I've kind of branched out to doing other sorts of lighting installations, using media to kind of tell a story, but primarily projection mapping. And I started doing it mostly looking as a way to kind of get involved in the festival and music scene. I played music for years previous to that and kind of wanted a way to get involved in sort of the community and everything else. So started bringing projectors to festivals, setting on top of buildings and stuff like that, just mapping trucks and trees and any way I kind of, get my hands in there. And at the time, there wasn't a huge amount of it in the city, particularly in the music scene. And over time, just doing it more and more, and it sort of just turned into a job, I guess, or a career at this point. Like I do a lot of it, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Wednesday, what do you remember your very first paid one? You know what I mean? I'm sure you initially started out like, you're just doing this because you wanted to do it, but do you remember the very first one that someone paid you for?
I mean, sort of. Like, I suppose the first one would have been when I started working into nightclubs.
Oh.
Particularly, I sort of got my start doing shows at Reflections Cabaret back in the day. Quite a lot of shows. At the time, I was working construction as well.
Okay.
And this was sort of...
What?
Yeah.
So you'd go from that...
Oh, man. It was definitely... The transition was a little bit rough in the sense that, I'd be running a jackhammer all day long. And I'd be doing these nightclub gigs till like 3:30 a.m. Sometimes multiple days in a row.
What?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. How was your head handling that?
Oh, I mean, I made it through. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily want to go back and do that again. But, sometimes I kind of like the struggle too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did a construction thing, and then you start. But the ones with the nightclubs not mapping, there was just lights, right?
Mapping, yeah. We do set designs, do projection mapping, more so on the projection side at that point. And nowadays, kind of gravitating into lighting, projection, sort of like an all-inclusive kind of show experience.
Okay.
And sort of what tipped it off to starting doing it full time at that point is. I got a call from a group called RPM Music Services in Toronto, and they wanted to go down to do the North Carolina State Fair.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, so this was sort of like right at this time when I was kind of having trouble balancing the two of them.
Yeah.
And we got this call for this gig that would have required me to leave my job for a month at a time to go prepare and set up for this gig down in the States.
Yeah.
And I went and I did that. And after that, I never kind of looked back. I kind of just, that sort of what pushed me over the edge. So, yeah.
How was that experience going over... to do the North Carolina thing?
Oh, it was excellent. I mean, it was fun. The first time I'd actually been to the States. So driving down, the I-95 through multiple states and getting to see like New York and everything like that. That was awesome. That was cool.
Do you remember what what mapping you did for that fair?
So that was some content that was actually pre-made for the event. They shot it.
Oh, okay.
They shot it with a 360 camera.
Oh.
And we actually did it in a traditional Mongolian yurt. Yes. This group from the valley, actually called Littlefoot Yurts, built this yurt, and
How huge was it?
I think it was 48 feet in diameter.
Wow.
But yeah, we had a custom-made screen, like a sort of a big panorama 360 projection installation there. So, yeah.
So if you're like, I guess you do it through projectors. So the projectors have to all kind of face different sides of the insides of this yurt.
Yeah, so they all face, they overlap, they make, and basically you blend them together. You're kind of presented with this big grid.
Wow.
And it's like a lot of monotonous, like lining up the lines, but then the end result is pretty cool when you get this seamless screen that kind of wraps all the way around you.
Yeah, man, that's cool.
Yeah.
How many projectors did you work with on that one?
That was 5 for
Okay.
that one, yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah.
And then, so did you go to school for this? Did you study for it, or how?
No, just doing it like a huge nerd. Yeah, I spent hours on it, and it's I think with anything, it kind of has to become a point of obsession at some point, especially with the arts or anything like kind of in that vein,
Yeah.
where you kind of have to get completely immersed in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can't really help it, and that's like what kind of pushes you in the right direction in a lot of ways, I think. So.
Yeah. Well, man. So, then what software, what apps do you use for your projection?
I use Resolume Arena primarily, and that's sort of the end of the pipeline in the sense that you make animation, you draw pictures, you get it on the computer, and that just basically, it's sort of the window to the world, where you take all these things you've made, and then you can map them to shapes in a room, or control them with audio, or like even human motion with like a Kinect camera or something like that. And yeah, so that's sort of Resolume Arena. I do my animation in After Effects, Cinema 4D, illustration in Illustrator, or Photoshop. And it's kind of learning a bunch of little tools that kind of come together to.
Okay,
make the
so
show.
you use these different apps, create the assets, and then put it into
Resolume.
Resolume.
Yes.
Okay, then stick it in there, and then the Resolume is where your projector is hooked up to.
Yes. Well, that's what's controlling the output of the projector. So like I can fit it to different objects, to a building, etc. Yeah.
Okay, and what's the most number of projectors you've used before?
That's a hard question. Pretty regularly now we do these shows at the Nova Center, where we'll do the whole ballroom, wall to wall.
Okay, that's huge.
Yeah, so for that we'll use usually between 7 to 10 projectors for the largest installations, and as little as 6, I guess, to really get full coverage of all the walls. And we'll map all the walls floor to ceiling. It's like 33,000 square feet in that building.
Whoa.
But floor to ceiling, all the walls, we'll do these big mapping installations there. So that's probably the most projectors I generally use nowadays. But
Wow. How many will you use for the church?
oh, there you go. That'll be more than ever. Just because there's a lot of little there's 2 reasons.
Yeah.
It's massive for one, and there's a lot of small details in it and areas that are kind of hard to reach. So just having the option of having that many, where we can go into the venue days prior, pick out the areas you want to hit, and kind of get that full coverage. That's kind of we're going to use I think realistically probably 12 to 14 there.
Shoot. And so what's the process for this church one? From when okay, I'm going to do Flash 2019 till the day, when does it start for you exactly?
It starts with a conversation with Lisa generally, just about the sort of the overlying theme of the festival, and kind of the direction you want to go in, venues you want to explore. Then I went up to Moncton. We did some walkthrough at various venues. This church had kind of sparked my interest just because it's beautiful and enormous. So we went in, checked out the church, took photos of everything, kind of spoke with the owners of the place. And then after that, I go home. I've got all these photos to work with. And then it's a lot of, we come up with the concept first. The show's called Moonside. When I was a little kid, I played this game called Earthbound. It had this inverted world where everything was kind of backwards and all the colors were inverted, like very psychedelic. So it's sort of loosely based off of that. But it's a pretty loose concept, which is great. Yeah. Leaves a lot of options. So we got the concept. We take the photos and basically cut out the details we want to. I'm cutting out the details I want to map back onto this space. So because the space is so complex, it'd be very difficult to custom make content for every little nook and cranny. So I break it apart like I know there's a whole bunch of archways, columns, windows, stained glass parts, right? A church is a bunch of repeating patterns. So you pick out all those patterns, and I'm making animations for each one of those little things. So I've got 6 like psychedelic distorted archway things, and like a whole bunch of columns that kind of break apart with like, little detailing in the animation. And then in the end result, you cut that apart and then you can place it on these objects. So I go back to the space and basically paint it with these pre-made assets instead of having something that has to be like specifically mapped to it.
For that one.
I've got the options to kind of work with where it works best in the space.
Okay. And so when would the conversation with Lisa start?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was about probably between two and 3 months ago. We sort of initially start talking about this.
So pretty much, it's like a 15-week thing from concept to.
Yeah, I mean the amount of time that passes, I'd say the content, like creation itself, probably takes about a month.
Wow.
Not intensive like every day, but kind of thinking about it, plotting it out, and then actually creating it.
But in between all that, you also have all these things you're doing on the side, right?
Yes, it's been a very busy winter.
Yeah. How do you do that? Actually, before you answer that, I want you to tell me about the New Year one, because that one was super cool.
New Year's, yeah, we did 2 different installations. One of them was Grand Parade Square. So I worked with Advanced Systems. We did an LED wall design, so it was all built out of LED panels, which is cool. We get to break them up and kind of use them like projection almost, right? You've got your 16:9 typical screen.
Yeah.
Well, we broke it into pieces and put big like stripes all over the stage.
Oh, wow.
Made custom content for that. And then at the same time, we did an installation at Casino Nova Scotia, where we covered the room with clocks, like vintage clocks, ancient clocks with like vines growing out of them, new, modern, like hand watches, clocks everywhere. And all the hands from them were taking real-time data from the computer, like the actual date and time, controlling the hands on it to be animated. So they were all counting down to New Year's Eve in unison. And then New Year's Eve triggered an animation that made colors flow all over the whole thing. So it was a bit like a self-running installation in a lot of ways. It was an interesting experiment.
Yeah, no, I actually want you to continue, because I remember when we talked about it, you told me this interesting process, because you had something that was controlling the arm that you could program it to.
Yep.
Yeah, what's that called again?
Touch Designer for that.
Yeah.
Touch Designer's it's very deep. Like I only touch the surface of what you can do with it, but it's like a connector of media. Like you can, control a hose that waters your flowers based on the weather forecast and all sorts of weird stuff. But in this instance, I was taking computer time, basically the time that's built in from actually the internet, and just having that drive hand. So I took all these clocks, I photoshopped off the hands, so we've just got clocks without hands, and then I took the hands and that's what I was basically animating. I layer it on top of the clocks in the end result. And so they're 2 different pieces, one of them being controlled by this kind of algorithm that's pulling computer time.
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, when you told me about that, I was amazed. I was amazed because you didn't actually have to be there. You set it up and it
Yeah,
took
I was
care
down
of
at Grand
itself.
Parade. I had a friend of mine, Bryce Holland, from Holland Audio Productions. He was down there just kind of watching the show.
Do you know what? He's my neighbor.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he has a red truck.
Oh, yes. Huge truck.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
He has a red truck with the names. It just occurred to me right now. Yeah, he's a cool dude. I like it.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah. Okay, so what is it seems to me that you can sit down on your computer and create all these assets, right? But when you go to the location, 10 projectors, all these things, you work with a team?
Generally just me in a lot of cases.
What?
When there's yeah, it can be a lot. Sometimes when there's when there's more work than I think can be handled, there's the great people I love working with, good friends of mine that are also into the technology and into the sort of the art form of projection arts and that kind of thing that I work with as well. So.
Wow, that's wow. I didn't even think of that because I'm lazy.
Yeah,
So if I had to do that,
don't believe that.
I'll have a team with me, guys. I need help. And then, so you started with the club scene, and then I know you branched out into festivals.
Festivals, I suppose I did festivals before I did the club scene, really.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, festivals, summer's usually pretty packed with a number of different festivals. And in the winter, I do a lot of corporate stuff as well, where people want something different, as far as an AV kind of experience.
Yeah, you showed me one. It was like a ticker tape on a bar.
Oh, that was actually for the Halifax Pop Explosion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did the Seahorse Bar. It was like ticker tape. It was like Sportsnet when they get like we did the top of the bar there. That's kind of interesting.
And that was all TVs or?
Sorry?
It was all LED screens, or it was just projection?
Oh, that was just projection, yeah. Kind of looked like an LED screen, though, which is kind of the nice illusion with projection mapping.
Yeah. I was like, are those TVs? When I was looking at it, I wasn't sure. And how do you decide? I mean, I know, for instance, like with the Flash thing, it's based on a theme, right? But do you ever just create stuff just because you think it's cool?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, I love taking opportunities to do that when I can. I mean, I get a creative freedom with most projects, varying degrees, but you definitely some usually. Like Nocturne Arts Festival, Flash, various arts festivals is usually the best opportunity to have to really kind of just do something weird for the sake of weird, art for art's sake. Even if I get a little bit of element of that.
Yeah.
With everything else as well.
And with the Church for Flash, are you mapping inside or outside?
Inside.
Okay. So at least it's not going to be cold this year.
No. Hopefully not. A whole bunch of stuff with Home Base. It's a club night in Halifax. Kyle McCracken's sort of baby. We've been working for years together. He's one of the first people I work with. Great opportunity to do some sort of boundary pushing club set design. Okay. A lot of freedom to do... to get really weird with that.
Where's Home Base?
Seahorse Tavern.
Oh, okay. I remember you showed me an image from something you did at the Seahorse Tavern. Did that have anything to do with that event? It was super, lots of colors, lots of lights, and it looked like a stage, actually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, more than likely do tons of shows with them there.
Oh, okay.
But I work with a number of different bands at the Seahorse and the Marquee, so it could have been something different as well.
Oh, wait. So, who do you work with the band or the location? When you go into the Seahorse, for instance?
Generally, it's the promoter, the person putting on the event.
Gotcha.
Or the band, in a lot of cases, or the band's manager. That's hiring me. Now and again, the venue will hire me. For certain things, but generally speaking, it's the promoter, band, band manager. That kind of thing.
So I come to you. I'm like, oh, my band is performing X show, and we have 10 songs in a set. What's the process for that? Do you need the songs or whatever to decide how to move forward?
Yeah, it can be helpful. Like for if it's a band's show and it's their show, then it really becomes about listening and really getting into their music and thinking of the story and what it sounds like and how you can make that into a stage show that's kind of theatrical in nature. Whereas for like a club night or something like that, I might try to make this spectacle that you walk in the room, you're like, whoa, and that's what it is, right? But with a band show, maybe you want to hold off on certain elements. Maybe it's very, very minimal and doesn't seem like much at the start, and then at a certain point in their set list, it becomes more than it is, So it's kind of thinking of it more like a story in that case. I recently did some work with Christina Martin. We did her album show, part of her tour at the Marquee Ballroom, and it was listening to her music, figuring out the story of the songs, plotting out the lighting and the video to kind of tell that story and stuff like that.
So it's not just lighting. Did you create animation or for that?
Yeah, set design, animation, and lighting. So sort of an all-one thing that kind of plays with each other, like in the sense that everything's kind of tied together.
Yeah, when you say set design, you mean like actually building stuff there, or?
Yeah, totally. So in that one, we used a bunch of panels built out of corrugated plastic where I was going to use a CNC router, but I ended up actually hand cutting these things with these designs that has sort of transparent fabric on the back of it. So I do lighting in the back of it is backlit. The designs glow. And then it's also hit with the projector from the front, so it also has this other element. So just different layers of kind of depth and that kind of thing.
Wow. Would that give a 3D type effect?
That's the goal. That's always the goal. Kinda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Ah, man, that's so cool.
Thanks.
And what is your favorite band? What was the favorite display been for a band?
For a band.
Yeah, just a band. Not
I've
just
I've done some. I really enjoyed working with Neon Dreams.
What did you do for them?
We did a whole bunch of different shows. Most recently, we did a show at the Marquee. We used pretty much primarily lighting for this whole thing. But years back, we did the Halloween show at the Kennard Center for them. It was the first show I did with them, where their album cover at the time was like this polygon 3D robot head. And it wasn't a robot head, but that's sort of what I interpreted it as. So we did this head massive behind them. It was like, it must have been like 10 by 10 feet, this thing, with a bunch of pipes, pipe shapes cut out and kind of pushing out from the right and left. And we had this for Halloween, we had this robot head that was like pushing like fire down these pipes and blowing smoke at the sides.
Wow.
It turned into like a giant baby face with like skeleton bones coming out of the side of it, and a bunch of twisted stuff like that. It was really fun. Yeah.
Here's the thing. So when you create the assets and you create the thing, do you go to show the band or the manager this is what you created, or do you only see it at the end on the show day?
Oh no, they're involved all the way through. If they want to be, and generally speaking, they do. And I always encourage their input, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
And not only that, like having the person who is getting the work done, their input can be really revealing and show directions that I might have not even thought of.
Yeah.
For sort of getting inspiration for the show and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'll make a proof of concept. Even before the work even starts.
Oh, wait. So, like, you're going with a paper or your computer and show them what you have in mind?
Yeah, so I'll do like a full 3D rendering. I go into the venues that I'm going to work in. I take measurements of everything.
Shit. I didn't even actually ask you that. So, because when you're mentioning the arc of the church and stuff, you actually have to kind of know the measurement for the place.
In most cases, church is different just because it's so large,
Huge.
so many details. So as mentioned, that one I'm kind of looking at what's this made of shape-wise.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's like there's 20 archways, but they're identical. And there's like 50 columns, but they look the same.
Gotcha.
So by making content for those shapes, then I can just kind of paint it all on into place.
Okay, so with the bands you were saying?
Yeah, so like the Marquee, I've measured the space. I have full like to scale like models of these spaces.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'll go in with an idea. I'll say I want this massive triangle that's 20 feet wide. Well, I can plop that in the software, see if it actually makes sense to fit in the space, see if there's room for the band to stand with this massive object on stage and that kind of thing. So.
And do you also factor in how the people watching the band will see what you're projecting, or just people will see whatever it is you're projecting behind the band? You have to factor that in.
Oh, of course, yeah. Shadows and that kind of thing. That's one of the reasons why using more lighting and set design with the projection kind of allows those gaps to be filled, right? So you build a set, and maybe the projection is just for texture. Christina Martin, we have the set design, patterns glowing, and then we have like secure leaves, like falling from the top of the stage, like kind of almost like it's raining down all over. And the projections use more like lighting and stuff like that. So I don't do a huge amount of like traditional screens, I guess, for set designs for bands and DJs. So you can kind of build it in such a way that you build around the artist, I guess.
Wow. And so what do you think, I guess, because we met at Seed actually.
Yeah.
But then you were at a stage where you couldn't actually be in a program.
Unfortunately not. Yeah, I know. I mean, it was a great experience getting to meet like yourself and hearing lots of inspiring ideas. But at the time I had a website up and I was doing a show now and then. So I'd put a lot of work in my website at that point. And I guess rules are rules, and you can't have a website. And, it's understandable.
Yeah. And you build the website yourself, or?
Yep.
Okay. What don't you do yourself?
Man, I like doing stuff.
And how would you do? I mean, I know you do most of the things yourself, but do you have someone? If someone was interested in learning this, what would you tell them to do?
I'd say just there's so much opportunity to experiment with projection mapping as a medium, and lots of people doing things that haven't been necessarily done before. It's really learning a whole bunch of little tools that become something big, but it can also be like dirt simple in the sense that, you can draw a picture, hand draw it. If you're good at drawing, for instance, scan it and, project that onto a building, or, there's lots of, I'd say just experiment and try to break the system. Learn the tools basically, but then trying to just there's a lot of room to experiment, I
And
guess.
then it's almost like you have to know so many things. Do any of these apps have overlaps? Like,
Oh yeah, with
okay.
the Adobe, they all play together. Actually, everything kind of ties together in a lot of ways once you kind of get into it. But yeah, there's definitely overlap between all of them. So you mean as far as like spending time learning them?
exactly.
Oh yeah, certainly. Like once you learn one, you kind of pick up on the bits and pieces for the other ones for sure.
Okay. It's not a question of, but different shortcuts though, right?
Sorry?
Different shortcuts on your keyboard in using the different apps, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, certainly. I'm not very good at coding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one thing I'd love to learn more.
Learn more.
I got some friends in the city that do some incredible boundary pushing stuff with that, kind of it's just another frontier.
So, is that touch design, is any coding involved in that?
There is, like, the whole thing is built on Python. It's a node-based programming language, but that means basically it's like you drag, there's all these little boxes and you drag connectors between them, and they all represent a piece of code.
Okay.
Which you can do incredibly complex things with technology with it, but it's like a visual code, so you can actually see what you're doing. It's what you see is what you get. You always see the end result every step of the way.
Okay.
So it's simplified in a lot of ways, and it'd be helpful to learn it by using that for sure. I'm certainly learning by using that.
So, and what is the next thing you want to learn now?
Next thing I want to learn, I want to get more into. Let me ponder on that just a second. I'd love to get more into building larger shows with lighting, truss, all the big elements of a big production. A lot of the stuff I do right now is, varying levels of budget for one thing, and always trying to get the absolute most out of what's available. But over time, building up what I have available to be able to provide bigger and more professional spectacles. And by that, I mean LED wall. Maybe that's more of a question of what I need to get to be able to do these things. But more so, a lot of this gear to do the really big productions that you see on TV sometimes. You can't necessarily learn that equipment without having access and actually owning it and getting time to use it. So just finding ways to learn the bigger tools and finding ways to integrate them into the work that I do.
So, like, for instance, at the Super Bowl or, say, Kanye West show, isn't it similar to what you're doing? It's a totally different thing.
Similar equipment and technology, all the protocols like DMX and everything. It's all the same, but every piece of gear is a new thing to learn and kind of master over time, So there's a lot of that's exactly it. Learning those tools, So finding ways to get exposure to them is another big thing. And I think that's the same for a lot of things. Getting exposure to the tools so you can learn how to use them can sometimes be difficult. So that's one hurdle.
Yeah. It's like, I want to drive an F1 car. I'm not going to get one. I'm not going to get one. But so now it's almost like you're the premier light person, projection mapping person in this city. Do you get to travel out of Halifax out of Atlantic Canada to do work?
I have, and I'm looking to do, I'm open to more opportunities. I'm very busy in Halifax, but I have done a huge amount of shows outside. I've done some stuff in Toronto. I did, actually this is more Ontario, Playground Festival up there. Hoping to get into Quebec this year to do some festivals perhaps. There's a bunch of cool stuff going on up there. I get calls sometimes to do some proposals for stuff in Toronto. But I feel like that's sort of the future of what I'm doing is finding ways to market myself, but also just network.
Yeah.
To get opportunities and show what I hope to be able to provide to these other scenes, in other places. Yeah.
Yeah. With these festivals, most of them are in the forest, Future Forest, for instance. Yeah. Are there any? I guess so. You could get a Jenny and it powers everything, but are there risk involved having all this gear out there in the wild and?
Yes, there is, but nothing bad ever seemed to happen. You obviously account for that. We'll build like shelters, like little called the dog houses for the projectors, for instance.
Oh, okay.
There's a whole team of people working at a lot of these festivals. The sets themselves are built by skilled carpenters, or at least overseen by skilled carpenters in most cases. And there's people working power for big generators that have experience doing theater power and that kind of thing. Okay. There's a lot of the festival scene pulls from a lot of people that are skilled in their own sort of areas that have just found this common love of this experience that are just looking to contribute in whatever we can. So there's a lot of really talented people that come together to put together in all sorts of different areas and skills. Yeah.
With the one, how did the lights? So the one you did last year for Flash, was it projections? Were it screens?
Projectors for that one, yeah.
And they powered up at 25 minus 25 outside.
Well, actually, it's funny. We had.
I was wondering because.
Well, for Flash, we had one of the projectors we rented had the ballast wasn't sparking, and it's probably because of the cold. Yeah. There's a multitude of reasons why it could have happened, but there was definitely some last second troubleshooting on top of a building at minus 25 with 2,000 people waiting for it to happen. It was literally like had this thing pulled open trying to get parts fixed in this thing while they're literally counting down the show. The company does. It was one of the most intense experiences of my life, to be honest. But it did go in the end. Yeah, it was definitely like a. Yeah.
But so there's always that. Do you factor things like that when you're preparing for a show?
Of course, yeah. You always gotta, and experiences like that really kind of teach you, hammer in that lesson that you got to prepare for the absolute worst. So now more than ever, because of things like that, I've learned to bring a backup to your backup and all that good stuff. Yeah.
And when it comes to gear, I'm guessing you rent most of them.
It depends. Like all the media servers, which is the computers that drive the shows, I provide that. I have a couple of units I use to do gigs. So
those are like super powerful computers, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
what's a common spec of one of those media servers you have?
I usually get to get really nerdy here.
Go on.
It's like a good i7 processor, GTX 1080. It's got multiple videos in the back of it.
Wow.
16 to 32 gigabytes of RAM. That's like standard for what I feel I need to be able to do a show. And it's not like the bleeding edge, but I haven't reached the limits of that particular setup. Okay. So I build a bunch of varieties of the same machine, generally speaking now.
Okay. If you were able to go crazy, what would you have built?
I think I'm set with that, to be honest. At this point, what I would get is a bunch of, I'd get some really solid projectors, like bright ones. The projectors you use to light up a building, I don't think they're not really meant to be owned by a person who doesn't own a company that is renting these things out and making money from renting the projector, because they're prohibitively expensive, but also necessary to do the really, really big installations. So the Assumption, we use two 20,000 lumen projectors. These things are the size and way more than a washing machine. They're enormous, man. Huge. So there's definitely the cost of ownership and also just lugging this thing around. Yeah. It's like a big thing to own one. So, but if I had the expendable income to buy one of these things so they go for $100,000. So it's not really within the realm. It's not very feasible at this point, but it'd be cool to have some gear like that if I had unlimited resources to be able to go and map more massive buildings in larger spaces and that kind of thing. But for now, we'll rent out a lot of that gear. Yeah. it makes a lot more sense to do that a lot of times. And depending on the venue, we get the gear we need. I'll partner with AV suppliers in a lot of sense. In a lot of events.
Is it you that partners with the AV suppliers or the festival that partners with them? How does...
And by partner, I mean it's like we'll work together to kind of put the gear together to do the show. It's sort of like usually a mixture between myself, the promoter or venue, and the AV supplier. It's generally of their choosing, although I've got people I love working with as well. But yeah, kind of putting together the gear because they have access to all this stuff.
So the people you work with, are they here in Halifax or you have people in the different cities you work in?
Oh, different cities. Like every city's got some AV suppliers. Like in Halifax, I work with Advanced Systems or like Basil AV all the time. We'll work on an event. We'll have this big ambitious idea, and we'll be putting together the gear to be able to make that happen. And I'll provide media servers. I'll network the video system together essentially. So I'll build the content for the space, map it, and that kind of thing. So.
And when you design a show, do you have... I'm guessing, okay, let's go back to a band. So the band has, say, 40 minutes to perform. Do you design the show or your mapping to run for the 40 minutes? Or do you have to stay there to control it each time?
It's always live controlled, especially with DJs, bands, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'll build scenes like songs, and they've got like elements that loop, things that, play with a song that needs to be queued up at the right time.
Yeah.
And then I'll have effects and ways to manipulate that I'll be controlling live.
Oh, okay.
And that's how you kind of give that human feel, I suppose.
Yeah. Because I was wondering how, but the difference between the performance and, say, the one at Flash is you don't really do that live, or do you also do that live too?
That'll be live in some aspects. So I'll have 3 computers running it. They're all networked together, so the 2 of them are slaved to one of them essentially.
Gotcha.
So I'm up there controlling one of them, the other ones are kind of following what I do. And I can apply effects and that kind of thing to 15 projectors, which is important and very impactful because when you're sitting in a completely dark room and there's projector lines tracing every little detail around you, and all of a sudden they invert to a different color. It's all your peripherals are filled with this change, and it's like that's how you kind of get that impact, I think.
So when you have projectors, your screen, you have 15 little boxes, and you see what each projector is doing.
Pretty much, I get to see the output of each one of them. So, like, I get presented with exactly what's coming out of them, and then I can squish things, layer things, drag things, draw lines, cut things out.
Can you switch between projectors, or
Yep.
doesn't? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, man, that's cool. I keep saying I'll go to one of these shows. I have to. Flash is a weekend, or?
It's a weekend. It's a Friday, Saturday.
And how many days are you on?
My event's on Friday evening. Setup is Thursday all day long, finishing Friday morning. Now we're getting the snowstorm apparently on Wednesday.
Fun.
So I'll be leaving a day early. It's good and bad because another day to set up. But
yeah. But so, what will the setup for Flash involve?
Loading in a bunch of power, which is a big thing. Some of these older churches don't have a lot of power required to run a whole bunch of equipment, right? So we'll have a generator outside, drop power all over the place, bring in lighting, set up, a whole bunch of projectors, run video cable, network them together, and then at night, go in and map the space. So we'll get it completely dark in there. I've got like a little, laptop that I can walk around with, but control the other laptops remotely from it. So I'll go
remotely. That's cool.
Yeah. So I'll be able to walk up to, the various spots that I've chosen to map, drop in, the assets and little pieces, and just kind of play with it. It kind of gets fun when you do the show that way and break it up into little pieces because I can layer everything, get everything in place, and then drop in washes of color. There's a certain corner that I think should be kind of emanating red or something, and have it kind of glowing red, or like drop in little, it's kind of like painting, in a space. That's when it kind of gets really fun and interesting. Yeah.
Wow, man. So, are there any colors you really enjoy using?
I gravitate towards red and blue.
Why?
I'm not entirely sure why. I really like the feeling of it, and but I kind of force myself to get outside of that. And yeah, totally. I do like. I guess more another thing to say is like I like having a core color, theme, look, something to a show.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as like a static image or like a little design that it is representative of a theme, you know, because having that little element that is not random kind of anchors it, I think. So having a color or like an element that becomes representative of what the show is, even if that's super open-ended, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so you are in a relationship, right?
Yes.
So how do you do all these things and keep your relationship alive and going?
Oh, it's not too bad. Yeah, no, I mean, like, we get together. She's a social work student. She's also quite busy.
Yeah.
But I met her at a festival.
Okay.
She's involved in a lot of the same community that I am, and we find a lot in common through art and that kind of thing. So she's extremely supportive, and
Awesome.
yeah, no problem at all.
I'm going to end it with this. What does art mean to you relating to what you do?
What does art mean to me? That's a complicated question.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's like doing this work is, it's a chance to experiment and try to do something different. Every week and every show, you know, it's an opportunity to keep exploring, and I'm fortunate to have an outlet for it that I can kind of strip down my preconceived ways of doing things on a regular basis. So I guess it's what is art to me? Yeah, it's an important way to feel involved and release, creative and emotional tensions into the world in a positive way.
Sweet.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks for coming in, Nick.
Hey, no worries, not a problem.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be here.
This is the Blackout podcast.
Thanks for listening.